Hello and welcome to episode 174 of the Foundry Roundtable, the podcast exclusively covering the Foundry for Star Trek Online. I'm your tame Foundry author, Jorgen1701, and before we do anything, I have to say go Rams. And no one will know anything about what that means. That's okay. Moving on.
That's a sports ball thing of some kind, right?
A sports ball thing, yes. My alma mater built a new football stadium and apparently won their first game in it today. So go Rams. That's about the extent of what I care about that. I went to a grand total of 2 games when I went there, so it was never much on football. Anyway, with me are 3 actually non-Ram fans, Mark Hawkman, Green Dragoon, and Duncan Idaho.
Hello.
Hello.
Howdy.
And first things first, we Duncan discovered a new Foundry asset today.
2 new Foundry assets.
Oh, there's 2.
There's 2 variants. And these may have been added with the other Agents of Yesterday items, but I wasn't using buildings at the time, so I've just discovered them today because I'm in that phase of the building project.
I have certainly not seen them before,
So yeah, we've got new Agents of Yesterday tents. These are the ones from. I don't know if they show up in any missions. It's been so long since I've actually played those. But
they're
do
from
show up.
The Gorn mission in Agents of Yesterday, the first non-tutorial mission.
Yeah, I knew they were on that map as it's a queue. I just wasn't sure if they actually show up on if there's any Federation establishment we actually play through. Okay, awesome. So these are from Cestus 3. So these are the awesome special Federation tents. And I did have a... Oh, wait, I didn't put the screenshot of what... I didn't put the original screenshot in the shared folder, so I can just go ahead and send those over.
That's a misnomer. The planet is not Cestus 3.
It's not Cestus 3?
It's
the
something
colony
else
that was attacked by the Gorn in the episode was Cestus 3.
So the planet itself isn't Cestus 3, it's Rock Planet.
It has a name. I forget what it is.
Yeah.
Because the episode where Kirk fights the Gorn captain, they don't fight on Cestus 3.
Oh, they chase him down and then...
Yeah, there we go. Okay, so anyway, I've sent those 2 tents over through Skype. And in the shared folder was what I did with them.
Because you had some fun with them.
I had a lot of fun with these today. I may have also sent some of that fun over to the 10 Forward stream.
That sounds hilarious.
Obviously, we are going to have to make an Oregon Trail mission.
Yeah. Oh god, it could be so much fun now.
I guess we don't have enough good ideas as it is.
Buffalo.
Yeah, because we got to do the Captain Proton mission. We've got 26th Century Anthology, and now we've got Oregon Trail.
Yes, there are far too many ideas to ever do.
One thing I just thought of that's somewhat less fun is making a list of the various assets that currently have missing textures. Because it just occurred to me when you mentioned the Captain Proton things that I think part of the reason why some of the items looked white and black is because they didn't have the proper texturing.
We know that's going on with the planets, and we did have a full list of that, and that has been sent over to Cryptic. So we're taking care of some of those.
I think I've identified some buildings that it's not the entire building that's missing a texture, but there's like a piece of it here or there that you look at it and you just see this featureless black spot instead of the...
yes.
And anytime we find those, we ought to make sure to post in Dragoon's
Master Bug List.
Bug List, so we can keep that.
One of them is something that changed relatively recently, and by relatively recently I mean within the last 6 months. Yeah. That I'm not sure if it's actually a bug or not because it's something incredibly specific.
Yeah,
you have the rune buildings, and they have these things that look like doors on the sides of them. Well, that particular section of the building is one of those things where it just suddenly turned black. and featureless. And I'm like, wait, so is this supposed to represent an open door instead of a closed door?
Okay,
or
so
is this just a bug?
Yeah.
The black squares or triangles are actually a result of the move from DirectX 9 to DirectX 11. And basically it has to do with the normals being flipped on those particular triangles, and it's like unnoticeable in DirectX 9, but when they moved over to DirectX 11, that's when it kind of started showing up because you couldn't see it before then. And so it's a case where Taco has to go in and fix like every single little instance of it because he's got to go in and edit the model and flip the normals on it.
Well, one of them was one of the Federation military buildings, I think it was.
Yeah, so we need to be very specific on which building and include screenshots. So we need to make sure that as these are coming up, we are posting in the bug forum about it, because Taco's probably not listening to the show.
Yeah, probably
not. And then we can pass that along to Kale as well, the link to that forum thread.
Yeah. So
also the explanation of the problem that I just gave is probably inadequate to actually replicate the issue.
Well, all you need to do then is just to basically visualize a prop under DirectX 11, and there you go. So we just need to get them the asset name and then the screenshot of where the problem is.
Yeah, and if
that's
anybody
we can do.
If anybody wants to put in a thread or a post in the master bug list thread, I will start compiling a list of assets that affect this, and then if you can include the screenshots, I'll include links to it.
Yeah, so we need to make sure as Foundry authors that we're also contributing to those bug reports. Because they do build up over time, and it's probably a little bit easier for Cryptic to handle it a little bit of a time, rather than to kind of come to the point of like, holy crap, we've got so much, the Foundry needs so much work at this point, how is it ever going to get done? And yeah.
So let's see. Moving along, there was a reason I asked you all to join me in this building today. So if you'd like to look up, this building is a very good example of how to make a building feel larger, because they've done all kinds of stuff with a really high ceiling and adding things in that look like second levels, when there's really nothing up there and nothing that the player is going to get to.
That's what you think.
Well, okay, I've gotten to some of it because you can jump around.
If you're Cation, you can jump up on top of that overhang above the kiosks, and then climb up on the angle, and then jump over the front wall thing. Or is it climb around the front wall? Anyways, then you can jump up over that railing, and then walk around behind the railing, and see that there is absolutely nothing worth looking at behind the railing.
Of course,
also, there are a bunch of invisible things that you can collide with for no obvious reason.
Probably to try to prevent you from getting up there.
If Maria is watching, those railings right there, we have no railings in the Foundry whatsoever.
Or catwalks.
We
need both of those. Also, if you look up, you see that metal grating that's used for the ceiling to make it look like it's not glass, but also lets light through. That is also something that would be nice to have as a placeable asset, because that size that it's in right there would actually be usable for. You could actually use that as a catwalk, even though it's not actually a catwalk.
Well, we've got the grate. I tend to use the grates.
Things. Yeah.
Well, I mean, something that's not tiny, because when you're building a really long thing, it gets tiresome placing 3-meter squares repeatedly.
Well, odds are it's just part of the ceiling. It's may not necessarily be a separate asset.
Well, I mean, still though.
It's you know what I always run into when I'm in the Foundry is it seems like I need one asset to be bigger and another asset to be smaller.
Mm-hmm.
Or I sit there wishing one was bigger and one was smaller.
I often wish that we could rescale things.
That would be nice.
I'm kind of happy the way how things are now, because with rescaling, I mean, we could just go. I think that would be it's kind of I like map building with a limited palette. If it's rescaling, it's basically anything's possible. So now it's just a 3D editor. So
I know, wouldn't it be amazing?
It's a double-edged sword. I haven't
so
spent
many
too
new
much.
options.
It's more complicated.
Options.
It's more complicated to do, but you can do more with it.
Yes, I would never leave the Foundry. That's the problem.
Oh well,
that's a great problem to have.
Mm-hmm.
You say that until we never see him again.
But anyway, the general point is, a ways to make an interior feel bigger is, build things that are on like a second level that the player will never get to, but they can kind of look up and see.
Yeah.
Or you can build second levels that the player can get to and use them for stuff.
Actually, a mission that really demonstrated this well is the Moons of Palmarie by Alimac, which I actually played for the Foundry Endeavor. He built a shuttle bay with a second level that you can access, but it just made that space feel so much bigger, and it also gave him the opportunity to flip around and use two different styles of wall to make it look more sort of richer and complex. So it does give you a lot if you try to build more complicated, because now you've got more options.
All right, so let's move along. Let's see what we have been working on. Let's see, did we get Duncan's wagon train pictures up there as well?
Not yet.
If he sends them to me.
I believe they're in the shared folder.
Shared drive subfolder.
Hang on.
Oh, I used the subfolder this time just to make sure everything's neat. They've also got a costume folder for 26th Century. But the main stuff is in just under Duncan.
We'll get to the 26th Century stuff a little bit later.
Yeah, but
there's lots been going on with that.
Oh yeah, and it was just that's technically in the folder too. But the main thing right now, wagon train. Actually, I haven't built a wagon train yet. It's just the one.
Just the one wagon.
Yeah, one little.
But you did forward a stream with it though.
Oh yeah, that was earlier today, and then I was killed by the Kraken.
Let's see what else could you do with it with an Oregon Trail mission. I remember playing that game. You have to go and buy supplies.
Yeah. What I'm thinking is that you could just set it up as that it's like an exploration vehicle there that's being used by other people. It doesn't necessarily need to be involved that the player is using it, but it'd be a great scenery piece. If you wanted to do some really crazy 19th century style Federation settlers, they've saddled up a couple of the rhinoceroses from New Romulus.
Yeah.
It's a couple of those, and you get into some sort of diplomatic situation trying to figure out who's rustling their cattle and finding that there's some deeper mystery at work. And now we've got a new mission. So yeah, that's the original. So I made a covered wagon out of the for people who don't know what's going on. Yeah, so I took the new tent asset and made it a covered wagon. And then I took it on adventures in the Foundry. Should be more.
It's just unbelievably perfect, isn't it?
It's perfect as a covered wagon. It's elevated. You can put the wheels in there.
Mm-hmm. You have anything that you works as an oxen?
Yeah, we do. Just any miscellaneous animal. Because I was thinking about Saeloths. Paul Sutherland mentioned the the fluffies. But I was also thinking about hitching up Voth raptors.
For those of us who are not familiar with Fluffy, Fluffy is actually one of those armored four-legged lion/lizard things from New Romulus.
Yeah. And did Green Dragoon find
it was from one of Starfarer Theta's missions? No, not Starfarer Theta.
Sutherland.
P. Sutherland.
Yeah, and I'm just double checking. Was that the only one in there? Screenshot?
That's the only one I saw.
Let me take another look at that.
Unless it was oh, you're talking about the 4, yeah.
Oh yeah, the other 4. Yeah, so there's the 1, and then the other 3 the other 4 is what I did with it. Because that's where the real adventure begins. Got the one in space, the one next to a volcano. The one with the monkeys.
While he's finding that, I can tell people what I've been doing, which is I kind of solved a slight map problem for myself this week. I had this sequence where the player is going to beam down to a starbase, going to have a confrontation with an admiral, and then get thrown in the brig. So I'm thinking, okay, how do I go from one to the other? You know, the transporter room confrontation to the brig. It's like, okay, I could set up some security officers on a patrol and tell the player to follow them, or I could just despawn the transporter room materials and respawn the brig materials right around the player. I'm thinking to myself, yeah, that's going to be much easier. And then you just have a player, you know, okay, so you get off the transporter pad, you go and talk to the admiral so that you're right where I need you to be. And then all of the stuff in the transporter room, except for the walls, despawn. And then probably add another wall or two, and the force field spawns around you so that you're suddenly in the brig. And then one of your bridge officers says, you've really done it now, Captain. And something like, or you know, Dragoon seems to be having issues with screenshots.
No, I've got them. I was just waiting for you to get to the discussion to come back. No, it was
okay, well, go ahead.
People getting struck by lightning and.
Oh yeah, the new Victory of Sompek dance.
This is the
emote.
Victory dance.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a per character unlock. That's unfortunate.
It's per character. You just got to get up to wave 21.
I know.
And yeah, it was a birthday present from the STO devs to Ambassador Kale, and they made it a secret unlock. Well, secret isn't unlisted.
This character apparently has
not secret no more.
No.
Anyway, your screenshots, Duncan.
Yay! So yeah, this is me exploring the wilderness, getting attacked by monkeys. And
facing off Klingons.
Facing off Klingons, yeah. And then the last one's going to be me exploring a volcano. But yeah, this is just, you know, you take one little group of assets, copy them, gotta get them to the right Y height each time. But yeah, this was my little. This is what I was working on.
That's pretty good.
The factory. So. Yeah, my little exploration wagon is just tooling around the universe.
You know what you ought to do is next time Kale does a Foundry live stream, give him those assets and tell him to make a mission about it.
We could do that.
That would be just the sort of goofy thing to do on one of his live streams.
Yeah, we could, and I've got that saved off on a empty ground map, the wagon. So I can basically just say, hey, you place the generators at this height, and then,
it's only the thing in the 4 generators, so you're good.
It's the 4 generators, but I did have to do some slight coordinate tweaking to get them just right. But on for purposes of a stream, we can kind of wing it.
Oh yeah. Anyway, let's see, Duncan or Dragoon, what have you been up to?
Not a lot. It's been a very busy week. In fact, so busy I forgot to get the last episode of Foundry Roundtable out on YouTube. So I apologize for that. I will get it out ASAP. But I did make an old woman. And let me go find her real quick.
I did, of course, also do some costuming, but some of the stuff that but some of the stuff that I'm most proud of, I absolutely can't show. It's for upcoming Starfleet security, and no.
Classified.
No, it's super classified. Like for the next mission, I'm bringing in Captain Taggart from the Federation tutorial, and that's not the spoiler.
Oh, that's scary.
How's he alive? That's the question.
Or is he alive?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just those types of questions.
Inquiring minds want to know.
Yep. It'll lead into something. That'll be quite epic. Although I did play around with the idea of like doing two different characters. So the kind of the Romulan equivalent of Taggart, the guy who sacrifices himself in the conference. I considered that, but that would kind of make things complicated moving forward.
All right, so this is
there's your old woman.
Yeah,
it's the sandals that make it work, I think.
So this is a character that you will meet in part 3.
Yay!
Yay, part 3.
It's coming.
Someday.
I mean, in general, I've been making good progress on my refugee colony. I'm down into the lower levels, and it looks like I'm not in danger of running out of building assets, which was my biggest fear.
It is probably one of the more restrictive limits that we have, other than costumes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we can only do 64, but, I mean, they're large, and last I checked, I was almost done, and laying out my route, and I've still got, like, 19 building assets left.
That's a lot for a complex build.
Good.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean...
All right,
I was hoping to have some extras left over so I can like do buildings in the background to kind of fill out the rest of the city.
Sounds like you have at least a few left. Just might have to pick and choose which views you want to add stuff into.
Well, I mean, yeah, there's one where you where you beam in and you can kind of like overlook most of the city. And I've actually been using the the Romulan walls for the new Romulus? So I've actually got those that actually go around and kind of form a perimeter. And so you can see those off in the distance, and so those encircle. And then I don't need to put buildings like everywhere. I just need just enough to kind of break things up and make it look like there's more going on than there actually is in the distance.
Mm-hmm. Can always use space stations as well. Those
True.
Can stand in for buildings.
Yeah, they look an awful lot like buildings.
And you can pull them from the detail tab.
Especially when you're thinking about Star Trek, because the architectural style that the Federation uses is basically the same both for buildings and actual space stations.
Well, here's the trick: is this is a refugee colony. It's supposed to be run down and not new and shiny. And so far, the only station that I found that works really well is stacking up the like the Cardassian stations, like one on top of each other.
Yeah.
So it kind of forms like a cylindrical, but they're brown, so they still kind of match the color scheme I got going on.
It's not a bad idea though for a skyscraper.
So I can use that in a couple of places, but I can't exactly go nuts with them because otherwise it'll become super obvious.
Yeah. Put it far away so it looks like it's far away. All right. Mark, what have you been working on?
I've been doing updates on some of my older missions. Well, I mentioned that I was doing an update for the Ocampa New Year one a while back, and I haven't ever actually finished that because I decided I wanted to do a really, really complicated build for a underground city, and I just never quite finished all of that.
I have a similar problem in like 5 different missions.
Then there is improving Otha Patrol to make it more, well, less of a quick and well, okay. One of the biggest things that people found confusing about it is that you basically end up in diplomatic negotiations with the Borg Cooperative, but I kind of compressed that too much in the original, so people really didn't get the point. So that was one of the things I was expanding, is doing a better explanation of the that aspect of the mission. Another thing I've been tinkering with is an even older mission, Diplomacy in the Gamma Quadrant, because I was looking at it and I thought of something that people had mentioned a long time ago as being an issue, and hadn't thought of a good way to deal with, and suddenly I found a good way to deal with it. Namely, that people didn't really feel any sort of like a connection to the person that they're escorting, because you get told at the beginning, okay, we need you to take this person to that place. You never even talk to the person that you're escorting to a diplomatic meeting, which people found that to be a bit weird, because you get to the ending, then the person just suddenly shows up, and that's as far as it went. So yeah, understandably, that kind of caught people off a bit. So another thing I decided to do with it, though, is that instead of adding stuff to the ending of the mission, I decided that the best option for that was to add things to the beginning, so that you don't just like see the person at the end. Talk to the person when you pick the person up on, which is not something that anyone actually suggested to me. It was an idea I came up with on my own, because it just flowed better with the way the mission was structured than any of the things that people would suggest.
Your quality's kind of drifting in and out there a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure if my internet connection is quite as stable as I would like at the moment.
We'll
be lagging a bit.
We'll work around that as best we can. Let's see. Let's move it along. I've got a quick mission review. I played a mission called DM1: The Kobali Sovereignty by Ashstorm 1. This is first mission in a new series that he has done, which is called, let's see, what did he call it? Delta Mirror. So DM1 is Delta Mirror 1. Basically, you are going to an alternate universe version of the Delta Quadrant via an accident, which of course is a classic way to get to an alternate universe. It starts off with you're summoned to a test of a new transwarp conduit, which will take you directly to the Delta Quadrant, which would be nice to not have to go through the Dyson spheres to get there. So you go to Vulcan and take part in this test. Obviously, things go wrong. It enters you into a dark mirror version of the Delta Quadrants, where everything is different and things are not really very good. Namely, that the Kobali are now the bad guys, and basically view everybody as essentially people to harvest bodies from. Which is kind of a fun take on them, and so they're the bad guy, and the Vaadwaur are now the good guys, and they're not, the Vaadwaur that were getting help from the Iconians. They're just the same Vaadwaur that they were. So their tech is old, and they're at a disadvantage, and so you get to help them this time instead of fight against them. I think this was one of the author's early missions, if not his first. And it reminded me of Zeb Godwin's missions, because he has a lot of the story and dialogue and the mechanics of the Foundry down very, very well. The dialogue was very good. There was lots of options. There was dialogue puzzles even that kind of mirrored some of the cryptic puzzles that you do. Say like finding the correct procedure to help a wounded person, that sort of thing. And all of that was done very well. All the trigger worked. All of the dialogue trees seemed to work. And that's a very good place to start off with for an author. Because that can be some of the hardest parts of it. So I think what we can hope for this author in the future is when they start really getting into map building, we're going to see some very, very good missions. So there's 2 parts in this series out right now. The second one is DM2, the Vodwar Diaspora, which is currently in the review. This one you're gonna stay in the Delta Quadrant because at the end of this first mission, he keeps you there in this mirror Delta Quadrant. It's kind of like Dragoon's missions where he keeps you in the situation, hopefully not indefinitely.
Oh, he's got part 2 out.
This is true. And it's going to be like our 26th century, which is essentially, if you play the missions, it's going to assume that you're still in that situation, rather than having it resolved at the end. So it's going to keep telling more of the story of the Vodwar in this mirror universe. He recommends that you play it after you play the Delta campaign, because there's a lot of callbacks to it and to the cryptic missions, which is kind of a fun thing to do. Let's see. I gave it a 4 stars. I thought it was very good. And I'm really looking forward to what Ashstorm has in store for us.
Well, I mean, it's always good to see talented authors coming onto the scene.
Mm-hmm. So let's see. So we have been working a lot this week on our 26th century anthology, getting stuff ready for that. We started a thread for characters, and we got lots of cool characters suggested for us. Just like the exploration series, these will be characters that people can use if they want, but is certainly not forced to use them. I kind of envision sort of the average 26th century anthology mission as, maybe you get called to the Enterprise J and Captain Dax gives you a mission, says, go check out this system, and then you're off on your own adventure. Maybe you need an expert, so you get we have a diplomacy person in these characters that we've suggested, so you could bring her along, or him. I think it's him.
For the ones I've submitted, I've tried to focus on those that might be fun for other authors to take a crack at, and then B would also just have some sort of definite function.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm not sure how some of the other guys fit in. If it's more sort of miscellaneous crew, or if we got like diplomatic experts. No, we got some scientists involved, so it's a really
got a good variety of all that.
That's what I was going to say. It's a much broader group of characters than we had for the very focused Starbase Magellan crew. So definitely encourage authors to take a look and just browse through and just see if any of those characters sort of work for an idea that you're working with. It doesn't necessarily have to be the traditional, hey, I'm the diplomatic expert, I'm going to be providing you a briefing. It could be a character that you might want to just, for whatever reason, it might be someone you want to incorporate into the mission in some other way.
Yeah, bring them along, put them into the story, have that tell a little bit about the character even.
Mm-hmm.
Something about them could be the B plot to your mission.
Yeah. Although if it's Captain Ross, I mean, that could drift up to A plot. I don't know.
The temporal officer who doesn't want to be there.
Temporal officer who's looking for a way to escape back to the 25th century. I just love that.
But I think we got some really interesting characters. I think my favorite one is we got the helmsman for the Durgath is a direct descendant from Moral Paris, and I forget who it was who suggested that character, and they said, okay, so we're going to make this the House of Paris. Okay, as if Moral basically started a Klingon house.
That's pretty cool.
It kind of works, really.
Yeah.
Because I mean, Klingon houses always got started by like, okay, this is my house.
Yeah.
I mean, that's basically how it goes.
So we have the direct heir is a young helmsman, and then we have for a while nobody had suggested a captain for the Durgath yet, and so I said,
well,
suggest me a captain.
I did kind of put Itrex there in a command role. I just wasn't sure, like, if the captain would be rank captain or it would be a general.
Let's see. There was something else that it was like I felt that was better in a different role or something. I forget what that was. But somebody suggested a captain, and they weren't sure what house to put her in. I was like, okay, put her in House Paris, but make her like an ancillary member, like a cousin. So you got the captain who outranks this helmsman, but the helmsman outranks her in the house. That could be fun.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. So I mean, there's a lot of interesting and fun characters that we could play with there. Now, one of the things we're going to do is make an intro mission for this that's going to set up the whole situation and end up with the fleet in the Centaurus galaxy searching for Earth. And I kind of worked up an outline, and Dragoon's been throwing all of it out, basically.
No, I only changed the first part.
The first part.
Yeah,
the first
and
part
only after
really
I asked if I could.
The first part is the more important part, but later in the mission, before everybody leaves on this expedition, we're going to go to each ship and introduce each crew. So I've been having the people who submitted their characters write a little intro dialogue for them, like no more than 3 panels, so that we don't have to write that. We can just drop it right into the mission.
That and you now no longer need to worry about whether you get it right.
Exactly.
I kind of missed that bit. Is there anything you need for my guys? Because I don't know, like,
yes.
They're all... Oh, okay. All of them?
Well, I mean, obviously it's easier for you because you're right here. But what I requested everybody to do is write a little bit of dialogue for what your character would say when they're introduced to a new captain from somewhere else in the fleet. Yeah. So, maybe they would tell their life story. Maybe they wouldn't. It just depends on what that character's reaction would be to meeting a new captain.
Oh, it definitely wouldn't be for me, because I've gotten into the more subtle, character-driven intro. Yeah. So, I'm just wondering, are you going to make this optional or mandatory?
I'm thinking optional for some and mandatory for a couple.
I'd strongly recommend
obviously that. Obviously, you want to meet the captain.
Yeah. Because I've been through a mission recently that kind of had a problem where it had a very diverse crew, and we had to talk through all of them. The dialogue was solid, but going after intro, I definitely recommend like having one fixture, and then everyone else is optional, or maybe 1 or 2, depending on what the mission requires. But definitely let it be something people explore, especially if it's occurring towards the end of the mission, rather than something they have to go through.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with Duncan in that the meet the entire crew thing can be a bit of a trope. But maybe we can soften a little bit.
That's why I'm thinking, maybe like 2 of them be actual objectives and the rest be optional.
Yeah. And I'm thinking that you might, like, if you're going to do all 3 crews, are you going to do it on 3 separate maps?
I mean, can we...
Well, what we can do is, because we have already started making... So, on my outline...
I'm going to share here.
What I've got is, after the accident happens and Earth is catapulted off God knows where, we have a map where everybody, meets in another system, and you have a meeting in a conference room on the Enterprise J.
So what I'm thinking on that one is that handle this scene like the conference at the start of... Oh, crap. I'm going to have to look at the mission. The mission...
Second wave?
No, actually. The conference at the start that gets ambushed by the Nukul.
Okay, yeah.
It's that one. So you have all the factions are converged on the conference room, so then you can hit each of those captains without doing a map transition. Because that's what I'm going to say is going to be... Once you get to that 3rd bridge and the player recognizes that they're just going to talk to an officer, I think that might lose them.
Well, the only thing is that I wanted to show off the bridges that we've been making.
Let's say, yeah, that's going to be a tough. That's really going to be a tough.
No, we don't necessarily have to.
Yeah,
I think we can do it this way. That cuts down on 2 maps. So
okay, yeah, and I'm thinking that I'm going to try to get in all 3 if I make a bunch of missions, because I'm thinking for my first one. Start on the Enterprise J, finish on the Durgath. That's 2 taken care of. And then if someone uses the Vulcus, then we're pretty good. So it could just be that, depending on the maps we have, because I know Zero's been trying to finish certain things off. What might actually be good for this one is to meet on the Vulcus. Because that one's got a lot of space to it, too.
Mm-hmm.
So we meet on the Vulcus, and then that's our conference, and then we go for Earth, and then players, I'll certainly be able to finish off the Durgath and the Enterprise J.
The Durgath is the easiest of our bridges to build. It's got the fewest assets.
I will make it more complicated because I can build more stuff to it.
Yeah, you can build on more, and people are certainly free to do that. My thought is that with the sort of interior of the Enterprise J that we built a while back, we could easily make a conference room out of that.
Oh, that too.
Because we wouldn't have to go to the bridge.
Yeah. And I think, the lounge that we built for the Vulcus, I think that would work pretty well too, because it's kind of a meditation area. It'd be good for deep conferencing. So, the one thing however we end up doing this, I would recommend just that one with conversation to make the map flow, because especially if it's going to be interior map, then we got into a space map. I mean, this is.
It would absolutely cut down on maps, and we want this intro mission to not be really overly long.
Yeah, and this could be just with all these transitions, it could be adding another 10 minutes onto the runtime.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because
the long load times.
It's so
what we do is one map with the delegation from each crew clustered around each other somewhere.
Yeah,
and you go and introduce yourself, and they learn about little about each other with optional dialogue as well, and there you go.
And that'll be neat for the objective too, because you put 5 contacts together. One of them is required, and if someone wants to branch out a little bit, it's really easy for them to do that. Right?
I have to say, optional dialogue is one of my favorite ways to add stuff to a mission without making the mission take longer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it only takes longer if the player wants it to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I think with that one map, then that should work out really well.
So, Dragoon, kind of go through what you think the front end of the mission might look like.
Okay, so, like I said, seriously, this was the only part of your mission that I crossed out. It just was you just wrote a quick intro for each one. Okay, so, when Dragoon kind of told me about this at first, my thought was, I've been doing a lot of work with trying to do branched stories. It's something big I do in part 3 where you can do different things and get different outcomes. So I kind of took this as a challenge to kind of make a similar but distinct versions for each of the 2 scenarios, whether you're from the 25th century or you're from the 26th century. So in both cases, I figured you'd start out by being sent to Wolf 359 by a very nondescript lieutenant commander or something other from Earth Space Dock, and try to fudge it so that you can't really tell his uniform. So in either case, you're sent.
So he could either be a temporal agent or somebody from the 26th century.
So yeah, he could be from either century.
One quick note. Do we really want to start this at Wolf? Do we really want to start this at Wolf 359?
Yes, because we can't use Earth as a door.
I'm wondering though, because that's so heavily populated, if we can find another system close by.
Find a door elsewhere.
Okay, so nothing about it has to be Earth Wolf 359. But an adjacent system is.
Conceptually, what does the starting point of the mission represent?
It's for our purposes, like with the AEI anthology, we tried to find a system that didn't have a lot of top 3 missions. So we're spacing it out. Wolf 359 is one of the most populated. So if you
Yes.
can get around,
No, I
using
meant
it,
like for this specific mission, what is the?
it's a location near Earth. That's
Yeah.
what Wolf 359 is
Kind
representing.
of what we need.
So it could
No.
be a nearby system too, and there's going to be a few options that close, because there are quite a few systems, especially just north, that aren't going to be heavily populated by Foundry missions. So
Basically,
I would just say,
we just need a way to and a place to get you into the 26th century.
Well, what I was getting at is what is the in-universe explanation for why this specific location is significant?
Okay, so the reason
We'll have
you're
to
being
come up
sent
with that.
to Wolf 359 is that an unknown anomaly has been detected. And this close to Earth, they're generally concerned about, even though they don't know what it is. This kind of is vague enough to set up both possible scenarios. So,
Well,
okay.
I mean that's definitely something where it doesn't really need to be that specific.
yeah, it doesn't need to be Wolf 359, it just needs to be close to Earth.
yeah.
We can find something close without much in the top 3.
All right, so let's see. Okay, so when you first get into this warp into the system, you're basically front up asked. This mission has the option to roleplay as a 26th century captain, or a captain native to the 26th century. And you basically choose, no, I'm from the 25th century, or yes, I'm from the 26th century. And that basically kind of sets up or triggers everything forward. And the storyline kind of splits. I was planning to use triggers to kind of differentiate the two. This might be one of those things I really have to build out a working prototype in order to make sure everything works. But I think in my head I've got it mostly worked out. All right, so in either case, you warp in and start scanning. But depending on your choice, you find 2 different things. So if you are from the 25th century, you stumble upon a damaged Vorgon ship, as well as a still open temporal anomaly. If you're from the 26th century, you scan and or track down and discover a just an unusual energy field. And the dialogue will kind of get branched so that it is following each. But you can kind of see here, I'm trying to hit main points for each so that the objectives line up.
Yeah.
Would this be easier for me to run one through each, or try to do both simultaneously?
I just run through each.
Okay. All right. So let's do 25th century. So first up, you discover this damaged Vorgon ship. Sensor scan quickly shows that the Vorgon ship opened the temporal anomaly to come through and escape, but was so badly damaged that they weren't able to close it again, and basically their engines copped out. So basically, yeah, the drive failed and they weren't able. So the anomaly still leads back to where they came from, which is in the 26th century. You were also able to detect that there's a Federation ship on the other side engaged in active combat. You decide that you're going to go. You're making a lot of noise, Mark.
That's a very good plot hook for giving your captain a reason to jump into the temporal portal.
Well, that's what I'm hoping.
Like, ooh, we detected a distress signal. Let's go investigate.
All right, so you proceed through the anomaly and find the Enterprise J is on the other side, basically engaged with more Vorgon ships. You help them out, destroy the Vorgon ships. You talk to Captain Dax, and this will be your first introduction to her. I'm figuring that she can remember you from the Battle of Procyon 5, which I'm assuming you were part of regardless of what century you're from.
And of course, whether or not you actually played that particular mission.
Yeah, I might. I think at this point we might have to just assume that.
Actually,
even if a player hasn't,
since
Dax will
it's a
still
time
remember
traveler, she can remember having encountered you from some point in your future.
Yeah,
That's true.
So even if you
temporal
haven't played it yet,
shenanigans.
you will.
Yeah. So as a self-consistent plot point, I think it works out just fine.
Okay. So Enterprise J runs off to engage more Vorgon ships. At this point, you're in the Sol system, and you are as close as I can possibly model it to the Sol star. I'm thinking maybe like one of those white planets covered with some nebula to kind of make it glowy. We'll see what I can pull off with lighting working.
White planets might get fixed because we did forward that off to Kalo.
There are some ways to make stars. We can work on that.
Yeah. The trick will be is because I'm hoping that I can do the transition from Wolf 359 or wherever to Sol without using a map transition. And so we'll have to be careful about backgrounds if we do that.
That's easy enough to do.
Okay, so you destroy the this new wave of Vorgon ships. Okay. The Vorgon commander basically taunts you that they have a weapon that is as powerful as the Toxu Tot that they've spent years developing, and that they are going to destroy the heart of the Federation in retaliation for Procyon 5.
This is the part where I'm like, okay, so would you like for me to, which end would you like for me to shove your weapon into?
Yeah. So I'm going to pause right there because that's where the split ends, and I'm going to go back for the 26th century.
So this line is if you want to RP as a 26th century officer.
Yeah. So if you select 26th century at the beginning of the mission, this is what you get. So same scenario, you're investigating an anomaly. You, instead of finding a Vorgon ship, you actually find a unusual energy field. Scanning the anomaly reveals that it's actually a cloaked Vorgon fleet, and they've gotten like some old Romulan cloaking devices, and so they're not the greatest. So that's why you were able to detect them. Several of the ships open fire, detain you. The others take off and head for Sol. You kill them, and then basically do an in-map warp over to the Sol star. Once there, you fight several more Vorgon ships. Once you've defeated them, you hail Earth space dock, let them know the Vorgons are here and they're up to no good. They tell you that the Enterprise is on its way.
They've started making trouble in the neighborhood.
Yeah. Well, you remember you originally sent there to investigate the anomaly because they were concerned about its proximity to Earth. So you're reporting back on that.
That reference just whoosh, right over your head.
Sorry.
Something strange in the neighborhood. Who are you gonna call?
Actually, I was going
Earth space dock.
But it's all good.
Well, it's what popped into my head when I heard it.
Anyway,
sorry, I never watched French Prince. Okay, so after you report to Earth space dock, you pursue the Vorgons closer to the sun. Once you get to them, the Enterprise J warps in, and Dax offers her assistance. As before, the Vorgon commander taunts you about the power of their super weapon, and that's where the two storylines kind of merge. So you destroy all of the Vorgon support ships, and with only the command ship remaining. However, he launches his weapon towards the sun. You can detect on sensors that there's significant alterations in the emissions of the sun, and Captain Dax informs you that they still have the Toxu Tot from Battle of Procyon 5 on board, and that they can use it to try and restore the sun. So they activate it, but quickly notice that something's going wrong, that it's having the opposite effect. And it's at this point that the Vorgon commander basically reveals that it was all a ploy. That it was basically they couldn't replicate the Taksu Tat, so they basically just launched a inverter or a field inverter into the star, so that when the Taksu Tat hit it, it actually had the opposite effect and stabilized the sun further. I'm kind of going back and forth on whether or not you either destroy the command ship right then and there, or if they get away, and it can be used later as a new plot point.
Maybe
for other authors.
Followed you. Somehow they followed us to the.
Well, it's one of those things where this is where I'm kind of like a little. The details are getting a little. I don't know, a little fuzzy. Just in the sense that now we've got to worry about an evacuation, and this is where we're getting into the planetary shield. There's a lot of technical stuff occurring in a very short piece of time, and that's worrying me a little bit with how the exposition is going to work out. Because we first got to explain firing a weapon, field inverter, Taksu Tat, and then we've got to start working through the mechanics of the planetary shield. Yeah, it's just a difficult thing with
some of it. I think you can gloss over. You can say we've had our top men working on it, and they've come up with this, and then this is the part that we need your help with.
Yeah, I mean, as long as you don't go overboard on the technobabble.
What I'm thinking is that, like, it kind of seems just there's a lot happening at once. What if the field inverter, instead of the fleet, the field inverter is the first thing that's brought in to get the player to Sol? Like, a Vorgon fleet has already arrived, and they've destabilized Sol. So you move that stuff a little bit further back in the mission. So you know that something's going on with Sol right at the start. You fight the Vorgons off, the Enterprise J arrives, you think, oh, everything's safe. And then it flips on you that, holy crap, we just destabilized Sol, we've got to save it. And then I think that flows a little bit better.
Don't know how that changes anything, though.
It's the pacing with how the exposition's working out. The major explanations are a little further apart. So you first basically identify the problem with the star, starting off first. Establish that as a piece of the setting. Then you can work with that, build on it, build that is sort of the anticipation. And then once you get the point of the Enterprise J firing, then you create the disaster that's been anticipated by the player, except now that we've caused it. So for me, it's just like, it feels a little bit better that way. I mean, but just that's from my own sense of pacing.
Embrace the temporal paradoxes.
Yeah.
Well, so, I mean, like, we could.
Bloodleaf comes up with a good thing, is that, you know, if you feel like you're getting too heavy on explanation, you can always have someone yell, "There's no time to explain," and then just give you something to do. So I mean, there's ways around when you feel like you've got too much exposition going on.
Yeah, but I mean, you're only talking about like a single phrase of explanation there. You don't have to explain what say it's a chronoton inversion field.
It's
because really it's a MacGuffin. It doesn't actually matter what it is.
Yeah, it's explaining a complex situation in a way that is just, for me, it feels packed in. So that's just my only comment here. It feels a little packed in.
The basic reason why people almost never attempt to explain how MacGuffins work, because, well, you really can't.
Yeah, my plan was just to explain it as little as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's not really going to change the story if you know there's like some elaborate process behind it. Just a quick phrase.
No, it doesn't change the story, but for me, it feels a little bit better with the pacing. To make the immediate problem is the worry about Sol. Is that's what brings us back? That the Vorgon fleets arrived and they're doing something to Sol. For me, that feels a little bit better to the intro. It doesn't change the story.
I think we could. We could move. We could move the commander to the beginning of the beginning of you when you just get into soul space.
Yeah. So for me, it's just bring that a little bit further forward. So anyway, that's just what I would say on that.
All right. So so either the Vorgon chip escapes or you destroy it. I haven't decided. I was kind of hoping you guys would. Is it better to leave that thread hanging or to just end it and not worry about it?
It depends on if we want to bring the Vorgon back for finale. If we think that might be of potential use, I think that if we have the guy escape and then decide not to do anything with him later, then that might feel like it's a plot thread left hanging. So if we want to focus a little bit more on what's going on in Centaurus A, then I'd say kill him off. But if we want to sort of focus a little bit more on what's going on with the Federation, then having the Vorgon captain, or, you know what? Well, I'm thinking like you could kill him, but even if we want to bring the Vorgon back, there could be Vorgon agents on board.
You know, my idea here is to blow up his flagship and leave it nebulous as to whether or not he was able to escape before the thing exploded. So you have that sense of, yes, we beat him. Yet there's always this minor doubt where an author who comes along later could say, oh, wait, he actually lived. Now you get to go kill him again.
You insert a line that says, our sensors were blinded for a second there.
So
you can miss a
in the interest of not making it too complicated.
Yeah.
Or something like you detected that some people jumped into temporal life pods, but you weren't able to detect who. So maybe it was him. Maybe it was just whoever happened to be close enough to the pod to escape.
I think we'd be fine killing the villain off just to give the player a little bit of a small victory because we did just kind of blow up Sol. Although, one quick thing is that with the Toxu Tot, when it took out the Nakul Star, it just sort of collapsed into a brown dwarf. And I'm thinking of just a way to sort of, I don't know about going full supernova.
Well,
because that brings
Drogon was suggesting something. You were suggesting something on Twitter. That's a step down from a full supernova.
Red Giant stage, because that would just basically.
It is. Let me find this here.
Oh, coronal mass ejection.
It's not that. It was. I need to open up my outline here because I had it written on there. It's called a stellar mass loss. It's where the star, and this does happen often in Red Giant phase, basically throws off a whole bunch of its mass. I mean, like a lot. And I was thinking, maybe it does this directionally, so that's why only Earth is in its path.
Yeah,
and it doesn't threaten the whole solar system.
Well, there's also something called a coronal mass ejection, which is kind of like the same thing, except it's just.
This is essentially
oversized solar flare.
Yeah, this is even bigger than that.
Yeah, we could just say a directional.
Weren't you the one that was just complaining about it getting too complicated?
Well, it's too complicated with the plot progression ideas.
I
this one would just be
because it's a real world thing.
Yeah. Also, you could stuff the explanation into a one-liner.
Yeah, I mean, this is just a descriptor of what's going on. So it's not about absolute complexity. It's just making sure that it's staged in a way that it flows and allows the setting to develop. So I like this because it does, however we call this, either coronal mass ejection or this large mass loss. It does get us around from having to think about Jupiter, Mars, and other.
Yeah, it's not a nova. It's not going to destroy the whole solar system. It's throwing off a whole bunch of plasma, essentially, in one direction, and the only thing that happens to be in that direction is Earth.
And we got a few minutes too for to prepare the defense. So that's where the shield comes in.
Hours, really.
Yeah,
that's what I was going to say.
Yeah, because I mean,
it would take time for this event to spin up and then for the stuff to fly out and then to get to Earth.
So yeah, I assume it's not moving at near light speed.
No,
of course not. Like maybe a tenth of light speed, probably.
I mean, it would, from the time it would leave the sun to get to Earth, it would probably be minutes. But for it to get to that point,
well, no.
We could say it would be days or hours.
See, light speed is a few minutes from Earth to the sun.
8 minutes.
8 minutes, I think, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, if
it
it's
could
moving
take 20
at
minutes. It could take an hour.
Yeah.
If it's moving at a tenth of light speed, then that's 80 minutes.
I have a feeling that no one is going to fact check our math.
No, so I think that would work out just fine.
You can just say that it's somewhere approximately around a tenth of light speed. It doesn't. You don't need to give us a precise number of how fast it is.
The disaster is coming.
Yeah, the disaster is coming, and that basically rolls into what you wrote, Drogon.
Mm-hmm. Which is basically okay. So they call you up and they say, "We've come up with a plan to save Earth. We're going to implement a planetary shield that's big enough for Earth and large enough to get around the moon and all the space stations. It's going to protect us from this, and hopefully, it'll be once it passes, everything will be fine."
Ooh, I thought of a cool thing. Write it so that the shield is actually like a breakwater, so that it's instead of blocking it, it's like kind of like parts it so that it flows around Earth.
Oh, we're not going to be able to
we can do something with it. Visualizing this it'll be something that we'll have to work on. So you're asked to, and then there's these shield projector stations which are being hastily put into orbit, or something like that, and you're asked to beam down to one of them because there's an emergency. And your ship is, of course, the only one that can help because you're right there. In classic Trek fashion.
You could say that there are multiple ships helping with each of the different shield generators, and you just happen to be the one that you get assigned.
Now, do we want to make these things we invent on the spot, or things that Earth has, but for more conventional orbital?
There may be being retrofit.
Yeah,
very, very quickly.
Yeah, so to basically you go from being a conventional defense to something that just has to hold for one hit.
The most hilarious thing about Star Trek is the sheer number of things where it's technically, at least from an in-universe perspective, something that's been around for who knows how long. It's just that they don't use it on a daily basis because reasons.
Well, in either case, basically you're asked to come to one of these shield substations because there's a problem. And you attempt and fail to get that problem under control. And so you have to evacuate the station because it and the ship will be vulnerable. Basically, it doesn't make it so that they can't put up the shield, but there's going to be some kind of like slight, phase variation in the shield or something like that. And they're not sure what's going to happen. But whatever it is, it makes this particular station vulnerable. So you get the crew off. You get out of the way, and you watch what happens.
Kaboom.
Kaboom, exactly. And Earth is flung out of the solar system. Everybody's like, what the heck? And it was because of that phase variation that happened on the station that you went to. So Earth is gone. Nobody knows what's going on. You get orders to rendezvous with the Enterprise J and the rest of Starfleet. And then from there, it takes you to the briefing of, okay, this is what we figured out. We've used the Midas Array to look at, we've been using the Midas Array to look at other galaxies, and it has detected some readings that we think are consistent with Earth. We can figure out what those might be.
It could just be that we've detected basically a subspace anomaly with the same frequency.
Yeah, something like that.
Well, yeah, because Earth that doesn't have all of its infrastructure destroyed, so you could, I guess, detect the presence of some of the remaining infrastructure.
So I was just thinking with the subspace event, it's going to be very big and noticeable above the background too.
Yeah, it's got to be enough that we know the area to look, but not specific enough that we know exactly where to look.
Yeah. And I was thinking maybe Centaurus is full of some sort of radiation that makes it hard to actually pinpoint the location within the galaxy.
It could also just be a factor of scale.
So that's why we have to go there.
Maybe add in the explanation that this radiation is why Earth stopped when it got there.
Could be.
That it was kind of like it was being like flung, and it was like having
it's like a catcher's mitt.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't go with catcher's mitt, but it's kind of like like you. I was actually going to use a baseball analogy, but it's like the difference between throwing a baseball through empty air and trying to say throw it through a bunch of water. Branches
or something like that. Yeah. Maybe that's the whole reason it stopped there. That's a good idea. So you're going to have a discussion with some of our characters about what are we going to do, and so somebody suggests that we, using the Enterprise J's hyper warp system, which can project a warp bubble around a big fleet, we send a fleet to this other galaxy, and we utilize the numbers, the higher number of ships, to be able to look for it faster.
Wasn't there a Foundry mission where was it the Interwarp experiment?
I've heard of a mission by the name, yes.
Where they had something about moving an entire star system?
Might have been. I can't remember if I have played that one or not.
Okay. Trident had a system that was part of a subspace anomaly, but it wasn't being moved by the Fed.
Okay. Thought it was one of the recent Legion of Myth playthroughs. But that would be a cool callback if
I think they did the Interwarp experiment.
Oh, yeah, they did. Yeah. So probably then.
So I mean, we could use that.
We're not cool enough to move a whole star system, though. We're just going to move a fleet of ships.
Okay. We'll stick with hyperwarp then.
And then so we're going to eliminate a couple of maps that I had there. So once you've got this briefing done, and that's where you're going to be introduced to the crew of the 3 ships. Then we have a space map where everybody goes to warp. You say, that was some cool time that passed there, and then we drop out of warp, and we're in Centaurus. And that's the end of the intro mission. Any of the authors who want to join this anthology, they pick it up from there.
That sounds like fun.
The fleet is in Centaurus. We need to start looking for Earth, and the missions are about us looking for Earth and the crazy things we might encounter.
Ooh, you know what? Well, one thing that actually got discussed in the forum recently is the whole ancient progenitor thing with the that one extremely old race. Oh, the preservers, right?
Yeah. I will have that covered.
See, because
no. I'm gonna have that covered. Totally gonna have it covered. I don't want to say anything.
You've already got an idea.
I've already got the explanation.
Well, because one of the things that people were batting around on the forum is the idea that, okay, maybe the Milky Way is unique in that it has a humanoid life everywhere.
There's lots of maybes there. Absolutely. Lots of room that you could play. Because
I've got major plot points on this one.
You're going to a whole other galaxy. Unfortunately, we're limited in our options for non-humanoid races.
Yeah.
So maybe having somebody come up with an explanation for why there are some humanoids around would be a good thing.
Humanoids will be around just fine.
I mean, because I've actually, in my missions, used multiple races that are not actually humanoids, but come up with some way of making a character model using what is basically a humanoid template that represents a non-humanoid.
And of course, there's some other things we do, like the some of those props could be used for life forms.
Yeah,
Udine Incubator I've already used a couple of times.
Mm-hmm. One of the ones I did is I came up with one of the more esoteric and exotic combinations of armor pieces to create a silhouette that doesn't look quite human. Of course, part of what made that particular one work is the way I blended it so that if it was a humanoid, it would be like, oh, okay, I know that that's their skin, that's their armor. But with this one, I kind of like made it so the separation is not quite as easy to tell. You're like, wait a second, they're what now? Yeah. Anyway, okay.
So Starfare Theta is bringing up the mission challenge. So we're going to start this off after the next downtime with a mission challenge. And what we're going to do is we're going to narrow down the topic a little bit from just where we're at. You're in the Centaurus, you're looking for Earth. We're going to narrow it down a little bit from there, so that it levels the playing field for authors a little bit. Because obviously there's a big lead up to this, so people will have time to think about what they want to do a lot.
Yeah, and I'm only talking about what I'm going to be doing and having stuff down on there because I'm not in the challenge officially. So I'm just making a title.
We don't let you in the challenge officially.
No, not anymore.
The same way I don't let me either.
Because I'm on the podcast now. So
exactly.
Yeah, so I'm just building a 26 anthology mission, kind of like Ico. Mm-hmm. I'm not making any kind of submission.
All right, so that's going to be the intro mission. So let's move on. We're going to try and finalize our costumes tonight.
Well, there's one thing I really got to bring up.
Okay,
and
go for it.
This is the problem I was having earlier this week, to the point where I was basically at the point of like, I don't know if I can write for this. It was writing for the player character.
Mm-hmm.
And I've narrowed it down. I thought my issue was originally going to be the 25th century, but the issue is the 26th century captain. And the problem I'm running into is that I can't write for both of them, even at a very, very broad level. Like, I was looking at an entire split dialogue that there's no commonality between them. Because
So
this wasn't something I could fix with my usual style, because I all the time include Fed, ROM, and other kinds of options too. Where I was coming in was that characters, like, this is the impression that I was getting from thinking about how the player is going to be interacting, is that an established 26th century captain and a new 25th century captain are going to get very, very different responses. And for me, doing a very casual style of dialogue, I was just faced with a problem I couldn't reconcile. So I'm thinking we might want to provide a little bit of a backstory on the 26th century captain. Just a little bit. Just to kind of give him a career, because we knew what the 20...
Give me an example of what the problem you're running into, because I'm not sure I fully understand this.
So it's basically, you go up and approach an officer, and it's basically how you get that reaction back. So for me, I do a very, very sort of play it by feel approach with what I sort of in like my impression of the conversation is. So a 25th century character approaches someone and starts in a conversation. If they have no backstory, no history, that's going to precipitate a different set of responses. So you might get a little bit like just off-the-cuff comments built into the dialogue, because I really don't like to do straight didactic dialogue that doesn't relate to that character's view of the player. So a new player coming in, the 25th century captain, is an unknown quantity. So the other characters around them are going to be uneasy. So they're going to be a little bit more distant and more suspect to questioning the player. Whereas an established 26th century captain is going to have the opposite response, where they're a known quantity, they're in the room, boom, they're basically there and on the scene. So they're going to get a very different set of responses based on the fact that they're a known established figure.
So why does being 26th century make you a known quantity?
That was the thing. It's just like, if they had, this is where the backstory is coming in. If it's a captain who has any kind of known military history, that's the problem. I'm thinking right in a little bit that makes them a relatively new captain, because if players are approaching this as an RP, this is basically their tutorial. So for me, where the two sort of join up is that if we basically say that the captain is relatively early in their career, they may have contributed to the Battle of Procyon 5, but they are not a known quantity. Because that was kind of like, it's the difference between where the player captain is in the 25th century. If we walk into a room, it is possible to write it that people know us, that we have a reputation.
Okay. So, yeah,
but,
I mean...
Not necessarily people who have met you, but people who have heard of you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't think, even if they're a 26th century or a 25th century, they're not going to have like the same, like, oh my goodness, you saved the galaxy a bajillion times that you do in the 25th century.
It's just like if you basically
I wouldn't even mention that.
Because one of the dialogues I was starting off on was basically getting it a little bit of a head with a Romulan officer about taking priority during an assignment. That they don't like being pushed off to the side while you get basically the lead on an exploration run.
Okay.
So if that plays out as a 25th century, it's basically, who is this person? I mean, that's the entire, like, what the hell? This person doesn't even necessarily have the same uniform as I do. Ross, what have you done? Whereas the 26th century captain is basically, you are a Fed officer that I kind of might have some idea on. So I'm thinking if you can get the same response if you're a newbie that really showed your valor in 26th century, like to the 26th century, if you sort of just by the action itself. So you may have had a military career.
Yeah. Okay. So
stand out.
Yeah. But I think you could use the Battle of Procyon 5 as the common anchor. So at the minimum, then they may have heard of you from the Battle of Procyon 5, which makes you not a completely unknown quantity. Someone like instrumental in the Battle of Procyon 5, because I mean you do some pretty serious stuff there.
Yeah, so I was thinking like you basically have that, but then like specifically say that's that's all there is. Because for me it was like, well, I don't want to say that in 26th century dialogue, and then if it's not established, then I could just be basically telling someone something completely different that we haven't established in the anthology, and some other author might go a completely different direction.
Yeah, so I mean, in general, I try to keep where it comes to the player character, I try to keep it very loose and vague, and whenever possible, let the player's imagination fill in the gaps. Like just offer like a hint here, a thing there, but never get into specifics.
No, and the only times I will at all just sort of like have an idea of what the player is, it's just from the Cryptic Mission series. It's just that we don't really have that except, like you said, Battle of Procyon 5 for the 26th century, because they don't have any missions. So for me, I couldn't go into writing the 26th century character with any idea of what they had done, because they don't have any mission series.
Just the Battle of Procyon 5.
Yeah. So if we just
use that as a touchstone. And use that as the only touchstone.
Because it was that
because it works for both.
Because if we're implying that they're sort of a player equivalent, then it's like, wait a minute, the player's essentially Space Jesus in Star Trek Online.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah,
so the way I always had it in my head was, once we get there, it's like we're all part of the same task force. We're all on the same mission. I don't really care where you came from. Go do this mission for me, as far as, Captain Dax is concerned or the mission commander is concerned.
Yeah, and that's definitely how I was approaching, like, especially having Captain Ross there as a known temporal agent. It was just for me, I was having trouble even approaching that point because it's just all the slight verbal cues that, for me, it's just my own particular style of writing. That got completely messed up with the unknown player captain, or the 26th century option.
Well, sometimes it's good to write outside your comfort zone.
This would basically be me sort of... This would revert from me writing in my way to writing in a, writing in a way that's a lot more typical for Foundry missions. So that doesn't really have as much fun with the dialogue.
To figure out other ways so you could have fun.
It would make it a little too dry for me.
Maybe utilize some of these other characters that people have come up with.
Yeah,
I would say don't worry. Don't rely on the past to define the interactions. Focus more on the present and what's happening in the mission and the relationships developing in the mission.
Yeah, I just needed a little bit of detail on where the 26th century character fits in.
Yeah, but I mean...
if we have them as a veteran of Procyon 5, and kind of use that as the way in.
So I kind of want to put this out as a community question, because as of yet, I have not met anyone who has a 26th century RP character, and so I'm making some general assumptions, but I don't have.
Actually made one.
Okay.
I retrofitted one. I retrofitted one of my TOS characters because they're flying the Daedalus, which of course can become the Nautilus. So I changed it over to the Nautilus and gave them new uniforms and all that kind of stuff. So I have one now.
Yeah.
So what is your respective character's story as far as you're concerned?
I'm not sure I've come up with that yet.
I didn't know.
I might work on that.
But I do like the idea that they're like it's just Battle Procyon 5. That I do like. And it can start working with.
Yeah,
is any of the backstory stuff? It's like, well, where'd they come from? Yeah, we're not going to touch that. But it was just that a few details in the military history. Yeah, I think that's good.
I mean, honestly, in the 21st century, we're generally just treated as veterans of the Iconian War, so. Which obviously isn't relevant for 26th century, but
yeah, I think just giving them that,
and you can always throw in a few dialogue options there to pay lip service to it. Whether you're a time traveler who came forward to help with this, or whether you're, this time.
Yeah, and that's definitely something I'm going to be doing too. It's just like
but where we definitely want to address it is the first couple maps of that intro mission.
Oh yeah. And I think, Dragoon's plan is it's in very good shape right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
think that'll definitely.
I know personally, I've been kind of, as far as writing this intro goes, I've been kind of relying on the fact that Dax is going to recognize you from the Battle of Procyon 5, regardless of where you came from. So that is going to at least give at least 25th century captains a little bit of cred with her, so that she doesn't just.
Maybe that's Dax knows who you are. She vouches for you.
Yeah. And I think that gets us in. And also, it also does serve another function, is that it does also place where we are for players who don't necessarily have a really good grasp of Star Trek centuries. Like, what's the 26th, what's the 28th, and then what's the 29th and 31st? So if we are able to say Procyon 5, then players kind of know where they are now.
Yeah.
Especially Procyon 5 past tense.
Yes.
It's like, we're
going to set it. We're going to set it after that. So,
though I'm definitely now going to have to put in a dialogue option when Dax says, "Oh, I remember you from the Battle of Procyon 5." The option to say, "I have no idea what you're talking about."
And
then she says, "I know you don't yet."
Yeah, it's like,
exactly.
I see. Yeah.
But you will.
You'll get to that point eventually. But yeah. Here we got this mission.
Okay, so that is definitely going in the dialogue.
Remember later.
It's definitely going in the dialogue now.
Yeah, some sort of acknowledgement of that.
All right. So.
Well, what was it? I saw a funny line. I think it was Pablo Hidalgo, who works on the Star Wars thing at Lucasfilm or Disney. He said something like, somebody asked him if he had a time machine, and he says, "I didn't have one now, but I do have one later," or something funny like that.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so yeah,
time travel, fun stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm definitely planning on just interesting things with Ross once I actually get to having an intro map.
Okay, so real quick, I want to pin down some uniform stuff.
Yeah, so I'm loading up the Foundry now. So because I do have,
we'll do a screen share.
Okay,
I think, and between you and Drew.
And where was the button for that? Let's see.
It's under the plus icon.
Okay, plus icon. There we go. Share screens. Do.
Okay, hang on. Let me.
Oh.
Okay, so.
In the Foundry.
We want to try and keep these as simple as we can.
Yeah. So let's see.
Let's start with Fed.
Yeah. So let me just go ahead and get rid of a couple of miscellaneous options here. I can put them back pretty easily later. Do. So this is what I was kind of going with previously. Now, how you guys with that belt?
Which belt is it?
This is Doctor 2. Do you want to go simpler or more complex? Or basically simpler? Because the other option I've been playing around with is Intel.
Well, I do like using some of the kit parts because they look a bit futuristic.
Okay.
Yeah, it's simple enough. I can go with it.
Yeah, so this is what I was doing with Intel. It's just color matched. And that looks pretty futuristic too. So we got that. Or that.
Do we want to go with like a bit darker shade of gray on the main area, but not necessarily like the full black like the 25th century?
Well, I kind of like it as a bit of a tan almost, because that differentiates it from the mirror universe.
Well, now that I switched to the
They
Intel,
use some gray.
Okay, I switched to the Intel belt, so now the color pattern is mixed up. So I'm just going to duplicate the costume, and there we go. Okay, so we kind of don't have the same tan. So we could go.
I kind of like
a couple shades up. Yeah, so I can go one shade up, and I think that
it matches the trim.
Yeah. There we go. So yeah, because this gives us something a little more futuristic. So yeah, the other thing I was kind of realizing is that we actually do have 26th century badges, because these 23rd century ones include ships that only have a 26th century option.
Okay. We have also got the alternate future badge, which could work as well.
So that's what I was kind of thinking, like, if we want to transition from the Chevron, because they don't have that by the 29th. So we got a few options. I mean, alternate future works out pretty well. I think, let's see, I kind of like the gold backing a little bit better.
Here, let me go quick track down a 29th century so we can have a point of comparison.
Yeah, because 29th century, it's just sort of this horizontal thing. So they've gone away from the main pattern.
So what do you think? It's silver front and gold back?
Yeah, silver front, gold back. I like. And simple enough, and it's also pretty available too. So even though it's an additional part, players might already have access to this.
And one thing that people could do is, if we use the kits for the belts, people could change that based on the officer.
Oh yeah, because
others could do that part themselves.
Yeah, because I've been using this in the main game, and putting a standard comm badge on it looks just fine too. Although I do kind of like where's that one?
Do we have the one alternate Odyssey one? That's just the it's a chevron, but it's just the line around the outline.
Just the Odyssey 1 or Odyssey 2? Odyssey 2 has that little backplate that's kind of a little next gen, and then Odyssey 1 is just. I kind of like Odyssey 1, even though it's what we're using now. I think it works.
Because the official Odyssey uniforms don't actually use it; they fall back to the default.
Let's use it then, because I think it's probably sort of a good stylistic.
Yeah, the only character I've used it on was I was working with the Dyson uniforms.
What about try it in black instead of silver?
Ooh.
Shows up a little bit better.
Oh, I like that.
Okay, what base color are you using for the uniform?
So, it's kind of like I've been trying to figure out a sort of a good few directions so players don't have to count. So if you go to the end of the white on the second row and then up one. The end of the white just before you get into the gold on that second row and then up one.
There we go.
And then the tan is sort of like, if you look at the TOS colors down here, you've got that sort of weird gold and then a blank space, and then you go up to that gray. So it's the second, not the lightest gray, but the second gray.
Okay, so I've got I've grabbed some photos of the Wells uniforms from Voyager. You want to take a look?
Yeah. So, and then the color that you got the three TOS blue options, middle one, and then anything from that row up. And that's just what I've been using as a shorthand, just so I don't have to start counting.
Yeah.
And I found that works out pretty well. Yeah, so you go you got the gray options, and you got the three TOS blue, second in the middle one, and then just up to department color. I've been sticking with the standard 3, but I added purple for admirals because purple is featured in the 31st century. So adding that in as a color to the color palette, and for just command that isn't associated with one of the just standard disciplines, I thought worked pretty well. But you could just throw it into like Intel or something like that too.
Sure.
So that's what I got going on with the Fed. And then the lower uniform.
What about pants?
So the pants is just that darkest gray black for Odyssey Excursion, and then for the boots, Section 31, with the darkest black for the main, the first one, and then
let's see, Odyssey Excursion is tucked high or low?
Tucked high.
I know at some point they switch department colors and becomes blue for Wolf Command, like a brownish gray for operations, and then a dark gray for science.
What we could do is just sort of like have this in between. So we could have purple coming in, and then I don't know, maybe on the way to brown you can have like orange for operations.
Okay. I mean, we're still several centuries removed from this, so
yeah,
we're actually still closer to the Stowe's timeline than we are to Relativity's timeline.
Yeah, and that's why I felt fine with just going to the standard colors and then just adding purple for admirals, kind of like
or for captains, because we got the white shoulders in Stowe's timeline for captains. Maybe purple is the captain color for this.
Yeah. Let's see. There we go, Frank. Yeah, so this is what I had going on with the purple for Frank. Just to denote Fleet Admiral. So, and then Drogon, you got the boots?
What are the boots?
Section 31. Black?
Section 31?
Yeah, because they're slightly...
That's not symbolic at all.
No, not not at all. I like these like boots. Yeah, just kind of.
I mean, they're good ones. Yeah, they works.
And then it's just darkest black for one, and then the third gray over from that, just to kind of match the pants a little bit.
Sure.
So that's Fed.
All right, works for me.
And then for KDF, let's see. Where's Codan? There we go. This is what I got for KDF. A little bit more complicated, but we can sort of pare this down a little bit. Actually, no, this isn't too bad. So for
now, I kind of liked Dragoon's
use
of the Dyson uniform.
Yeah, I think this more like works a little bit better for a field officer, kind of like a warrior rank.
Mainly because obviously players can no longer obtain the Cabal uniform.
Yeah. Yeah, like on this one, you would have to substitute for new players. They would basically have to substitute for TOS 23rd century, and it still works. You have to flip the colors around, but. Yeah, I like Dragoons. For standard officer, I like that sort of the more elaborate.
We can have like differences between officer and enlisted. Do 2 uniforms for each, or an officer and enlisted for KDF, officer and enlisted for Romulan.
Yeah, and I think that would work out well for Romulan because we got the styles that Primarch came up with, and then I was toying around with an admiral.
Yeah.
And then let's see. There we go. Wait. Where is he? Where's Pim? There's Pim. So this is where I was going for a Romulan officer. Sort of lower ranking officer.
Yeah.
So, and then let's see. This was higher ranking officer.
Mm-hmm.
I might adjust the shade of green if we can. Maybe a little bit closer to true green, less.
We actually don't have that many options.
On
this palette, because you can kind of get into like what might blend in a little bit better.
I like that blue green.
Yeah,
it's different.
I like that
because I think this would blend in a little bit better with the Romulan architecture. It's going to be a little bit matching that in.
It's a little more New Romulus.
Yeah, a little multicultural. It's not just Romulans. So what I can go ahead and do on these ones, because these are a little bit more complicated, just throw all the uniform.
Work up some instructions for me.
Yeah. And because these are a little bit a little harder. The Fed one is real easy, and this one I think player captains For those
simple,
for
and
those RPing that or just wanting to sort of get into character, because even if a 25th Century captain's playing, they might want to just sort of switch up uniforms. Someone exploded.
Whoa. Thunder.
Sounded like thunder.
Yeah, sorry, that came through my mic. I wasn't really expecting that, but
I wouldn't think so.
How do you expect that?
No one expects.
Well, I mean, as long as you're not in the hurricane right now, because that would be terrible.
No, that's not close to me.
And the other thing I was thinking is actually I'm using my other account for my 26th Century character, and she does not have access to Jupiter, so I was thinking she could just use which one was I thinking?
Oh, here we go. I found my Klingon.
Just Sierra 1.
Sierra 1. Ooh. I like also Sierra 4 works pretty well for a future uniform.
Ooh, I just thought, well, what races do you think we should be using for the crew?
I've had people doing suggestions on a forum thread, and we've come up with a lot of people wanted to do like hybrids. Like there's a half like the Klingon captain is going to be half Klingon, half Betazoid.
Yeah, and I think that works.
And obviously, people can introduce their own characters when they make a mission as well.
Well, one thing I was just thinking of is how in the arena of Sumpec, it keeps listing the Cardassians and the Dominion as allies of the Federation.
Yeah, we got Pax Federatica suggested Erla the Changeling from his 100th episode. That's been suggested and approved for Dominion representative. And then you can add like Cardassians. You can basically just fold into Federation. Just say, hey, there we go.
Well, what I was thinking of is that maybe toss in a Vorta hybrid.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, although there's a lot of room for people to introduce their own uniforms their own uniforms and their own characters as well.
Of course. It's just an idea that popped into my head while you were talking about that I thought would be something neat to see.
Yeah. Although this might get mentioned in my mission, but the species that I made for Starfleet Security, the EB, by this point they've joined the Klingon Empire.
That's
not
nice.
The Fed. They're a Klingon.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I don't think that Dragoon will want me to provide this information or Drogon.
Right. Is this before the Klingons become members of the Federation?
Correct.
Yeah. We're thinking that in the progression of galactic society, the big three empires have kind of grown closer together, but they're not quite to the point of just joining.
Yeah, that's why they're quick to do a joint mission, but they're not together. It's kind of like U.S. and European Union.
We're very good friends now.
Yeah, so it's like U.S., European Union, and Australia and Canada are going off to have adventures. So independent, but ostensibly allies.
Yeah.
So yeah, I found my my Klingon costume. It does have the Kabali head dress, but we don't necessarily need it.
No. I'd say the only thing that players won't have access to is that sash.
What is the sash?
It's the Bortus one. I think it's a vet one. I'm not sure. I just know that it's not accessible as far as I can see in my game, and that's without any sort of veteran status.
But that's obviously people can do whatever sash they like.
Oh yeah, and that's the thing. It's just like, hey, that works out just fine.
Wait, hold it. That might actually be a uniform option that's unlocked by purchasing it from the Fleet store.
Nope.
No, it's definitely it's part of the veteran long jacket. I'm looking it up right now.
Really? Oh, okay. Then.
All right, so I will concede that is not accessible to everyone. But I mean, the Dyson uniform can be unlocked, but
yeah, the Jem'Hadar gauntlets are a little pricey, but I think that's still manageable. You can easily, the Klingons are set on gauntlets. So that's not a problem at all. So I think this all works fine. Although I don't know about the basic belt.
Well, if we're talking about people building things in the Foundry, though,
we also want to make sure that we're providing things for players to wear on their own characters while playing.
Oh, right, that okay.
Yeah, so I think this works out fine for the Klingons. Like, there's a couple low-way options, but those can be easily substituted because the Klingon, like those particular options, the Klingons have got great analogs for. So I think that works out just fine.
You could do Korra Sash.
We can always make the point.
Ooh, I do like the Korra Sash.
Wait, which sash is the one that you get from the fleet stuff?
You don't get a sash from that.
No?
Nope. You get a lot of other stuff, but those are all gauntlets, shoulder pads, and boots.
Okay, so the one we've got on screen here, that's going to be the officer uniform for Klingons. And then for enlisted types or, lower ranking officers or maybe excursion uniform, we can use yours, Duncan.
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and create another variant that has a few more tweaks to make it a little bit more accessible, because that was kind of setting up for a main character. But yeah, I mean that one, I should be able to create something that is going to be really player accessible on that.
Yeah, sounds good. So if you and Duncan, or if Duncan and Dragoon can provide me with instructions for all these uniforms, that would be good.
Yep,
and then everybody is posting their facial sliders for their characters on the forum thread, so I can collect all of that and have all of that as a big resource for people to use for their 26th century missions if they want them.
Yeah. The only one I need to get you is Super Augmented Jigoro here.
That looks a little creepy.
Yep, that's why she's slightly unstable now.
It's starting to liquefy.
No, metal. She's
Solidify.
Basically, yeah, she's getting very, very hard thermal plating.
Apparently, what happens to the Eevee when they've been around this long?
This is actually Conclave tech, so I don't have a definite plot point, but it's just somewhere in this intervening century she gets heavily augmented, and that also explains why she's still here in a very immediate way. Although I did establish that there is, at least in background lore, there's one Eevee that's 800 years old, and that's Hazra. But I couldn't go that far, so.
So let's see what else we got. We did a poll, and we have a name now for Captain Dax. She is Captain Esperanza Dax.
Esperanza
of the USS Enterprise J, or Ranza to her friends. Which, maybe one of these officers is a friend. Maybe a player character could become a friend. Who knows?
Yeah. That I think that's it'd be a neat connection, just to provide that. One quick thing: do we want to reach out to Ambassador Kale to see if Ham Sandwich can serve in the fleet in some sort of official capacity?
Maybe. Who knows? Why don't you do that on his next live stream? See what he says.
We shall see. Although, I don't know, I actually be able to make them this semester. The last semester I worked a little late, so it's just like, couldn't quite get there in time to start, but I think this semester is all going to be good.
All right, let's see. I think that's about it for tonight. So, Dragoon, if you want to put up our contact info.
Okay. We can be reached by email at foundryroundtable@live.com. We are also on Twitter at foundryroundtab. Drogan can be reached at Drogan1701. Duncan can be reached at Gorgonuts_SSF. Mark can be reached at MAR Hawkman. And I can be reached at Green Dragoon. And remember, we are looking for, if you have a 26th century RP character, we want to hear about it. What's their story? How do you RP with them? All that good stuff.
We've had all these 26th century ships for quite a while now, so if you've got a character you've made that's specifically a 26th century officer to fly them, we'd like to know about it.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. And in general, we just kind of want to make sure that we're not doing like something crazy that's going to screw up your RP, since we are including it as an option.
Yeah. All right. Then we will say goodnight.
Good night.
Right?
Good night.